Mr. Charles. Before I start, please like, subscribe. Many of you are watching but not subscribing. I think really subscribe, and then I can obviously see that the channel is growing and I can do more. Okay, so let's continue with the question paper. Let me scroll down. Uh, yeah, so life of pi question 9.5. Okay, 9.5. So the question is, account for the interview with Pi conducted by the Japanese officials. So 3 marks there. So account for the interview with Pi conducted by the Japanese officials. So obviously Mr. Chiba and Mr. Okamoto. Okay. So the first mark will be that they wanted to investigate what happened. Even if you write it as simply as that, that will give you a mark. They wanted to investigate what happened to Pi and what happened to the Chimsum. Okay? Then you can go on to state that Pi was the sole survivor. That will be the second mark. Pi was the sole survivor. So they wanted to investigate what happened to the Chimsum, given that Pi was the sole survivor, and they wanted to determine whether the sinking of the ship was due to human error or nature. So remember, they are uncertain. They don't know what caused the explosion in the engine. They can only suspect. They don't really know. They're not certain that it was an explosion. Okay? They are speculating, and therefore, the idea here is that the first mark would be they wanted to investigate. Given that Pa is a sole survivor, 2 marks. They wanted to determine whether the sinking of the ship was caused by human error or nature. And you can even go on to mention that they wanted, to for insurance purposes as well. So given if it was human, if it was nature, sorry, then they obviously, they are able to pay Pi out and the insurance money. So that's another reason why they wanted to conduct the investigation. Okay. 9.6. Refer to lines 33 to 34. Will be careful. Ellipsis into Richard Parker. How do these lines reflect Mr. Okamoto's attitude towards Pi? So obviously you need to read the extract, okay? Chapter 99. How do these lines influence Mr. Okamoto's attitude? So some of you might say that Mr. Okamoto is being sarcastic, or is being undermining, or is being patronizing. Okay, and that is true. But the idea here is that he is trying not to upset Pi further. He is trying not to traumatize Pi further. So him being sarcastic and making jokes and sometimes being patronizing is a way in which he's trying not to, upset Pi further. So deep down, he's very sympathetic and he's caring about Pi and Pi's ordeal. So the first mark will be that he comes across as being sarcastic or patronizing. The second mark is that he's trying not to upset Pi. And then you can go on to account that deep down he's being sympathetic about Pi's ordeal. Okay, so that will give you the 3 marks there. 9.7. Refer to line 35. Don't worry, you won't. He's hiding some you will never find. Based on your knowledge of the novel as a whole. Here we have this question again, where you need to look at the novel holistically. Even though they mention chapter 99, chapter 99, that's only the starting point. You need to account for the novel as a whole. Okay? Discuss the significance of Pi statement. So Pi is making the statement that you will never find RP. He's hiding somewhere. You will never find him. So you need to, based on your knowledge of the novel as a whole, discuss the importance of this statement. And here we can really mention, that RP or Richard Parker is Pi's alter ego, his second personality. And here I might lose many of you, but RP, Richard Parker, is a coping mechanism. Okay? Richard Parker is a coping mechanism. In other words, it is Pi's animalistic side to him. And the reason why he says you will never find him is because he is Richard Parker. Richard Parker is part of his personality, his alter ego. So you are looking for a tiger that you will never find because he is within me. That's the idea here. Richard Parker is a coping mechanism. Okay, that's a one mark. You can go on to mention that Richard Parker is Pi's brutal side, this animalistic, savage side of him. Okay, because remember, Pi is forced to commit brutal acts. For example, killing the blind Frenchman, uh, drinking the blood of the turtle, eating fish, and many other atrocities. And the idea here is that Pi says, it's not me, it is my animalistic side called Richard Parker. Okay, Pi is able to justify his animalistic behavior by attributing this to RP. So this is a coping mechanism even later in life when Pi is an adult. And Pi, this is how Pi is able to deal with trauma. All the atrocities, all the brutal, experiences he had, he's attributing that to Richard Parker and not to himself, to keep himself sane and not to be traumatized further. So RP is a coping mechanism, and you need to obviously account further. Okay, that will give you 3 marks. Well explained. In line 26, Pi agrees with Mr. Okamoto that believing in the better story is similar to believing in God. Discuss the validity of Pi's belief in the context of the novel as a whole. Guys, when you see the word validity, all we want to know, explain why the statement is valid. And most often, I promise you not, the statement is valid. When they say discuss the validity, it is valid. When they say, do you agree? You agree. Okay? You agree. If you're going to disagree, you have to really provide solid reasons why. There is something called VAR. VAR. It's called a valid alternative response. So we do allow you to provide that alternative response, but you must be convincing and compelling in your answer. So I would always advise you to agree the statement is valid, and then you account thereof. So Pi agrees, and you agree, of course, with Mr. Okamoto that believing in the better story is similar to believing in God. Discuss the validity of Pi's belief. Okay, so you can say that the animal story is hard to believe, or it's difficult to believe because it comes across as being fantasy or magical. So that's 1 mark there. It is hard to believe because it is, number one, unrealistic, and number two, it is a fantasy, and number three, it's magical. Yet you can say that the story is inspirational as it offers hope. So yes, the animal story with orange juice, with the hyena, and with the zebra comes across, as being magical and a fantasy, but it is inspirational and it offers us a glimmer of hope. It is not, and this is the second mark here, or third mark, it is not conforming to the dry, useless factuality. So Pi mentions this dry, useless factuality. When a story is dry, it is boring, it is not creative, it is unimaginative. Okay? And he says that the story with the humans the human counterpart, that is dry, it is useless, it is factuality. He says that we need to find the better story. Even with religion, we need to find the better story. Okay, he goes on to say that the animal story is more satisfying, it's more exciting, it's more creative. So for 4 marks here, you need to really account, you need to go in detail. You have to explain that the animal story is hard to believe, given that it is magical or a fantasy, yet it is inspirational and it offers hope. Then you have to explain the idea of dry, useless factuality. Then you need to explain that the animal story is more satisfying and exciting and creative for 4 marks. It's not that difficult. But the problem is that you need to understand the novel holistically from chapter 1 to chapter 99, including the author's note. Okay? So when they say discuss the validity, it is valid, yes. Account why. Do you agree? We always agree. Explain why. Okay, and remember that the animal story, it is more creative, satisfying, and exciting, and the human story is the dry, tasteless factuality. Okay, please like, please subscribe, and please comment as well. Thank you. Cheers.